Welcome back, and thank you for being with us this lovely Saturday morning. Now let's get the show on the road in earnest. The leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and Trade Union Congress, TUC, are appealing to the President to take immediate steps to revamp the country's economy. The union made this known during the celebration of Workers' Day on May 1. They urged the President to check the worrisome unemployment rate among the youths and to revamp the economy. Now, we have people who are going to help us look at this whole May Day thing and how workers in Nigeria fare. It's my pleasure to welcome the former TUC President, Mr. Peter Esele.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we also have a transformational leadership expert, Mr. Olumide Olugbenle.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Nice to be here.
So, you are part of Labour. Let me go straight. Let me just cut it straight. Did you all, or did we all have anything to celebrate on May 1, apart from 30,000 naira minimum wage? So don't even say that one at all.
Basically, once you're alive, you have something to celebrate. So first, the workers are alive. So first, what we normally do on the 1st of May is that you take stock, look at where you are, what has been happening to you, where you are going, and then you also project into the future. That's why you see leadership of both NSA and TUC are now appealing to the government to say revamp the economy. Unemployment is currently 33.5% unemployment rate in the country. So that itself is challenging.
53%.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Olugbenle, let me ask you the same question. Did we have anything to celebrate?
Well, Peter said it. We have life, and I'll probably say we have hope.
Yeah.
That's a big thing to celebrate. I do believe that if we get things right now, Nigeria can still deliver on its promise. And if Nigeria delivers on its promise, Africa is set to rule the world. So we do have that hope, but if we look back historically in recent times, not much.
Yeah, the Vice President did say that the government was committed to providing an enabling environment for workers to thrive. Mr. Esele, do you believe him?
Well, basically, we've been, over the years, we've always been hearing enabling environment from successive administration. I think that is a mantra where everybody talks about enabling environment. But what workers are majorly interested in is what is on their table, the table menu. And then when you look back, you now ask yourself, 30,000 naira. Yes, minimum wage has been increased to 30,000 naira. And if you do at 360 naira to the dollar, it's about $85 to $86 a month. And if you do the 18,000 naira that we had, was negotiated at 150 naira to the dollar, which comes to about $120. So you have higher, when you look at the figures naira-wise, it's higher. But when you look at the purchasing power of your 30,000 naira, it's below your 18,000 naira. Sure. So how do you augment all of this? That is where, when the Vice President was talking about, when he was talking, and my take from all of that in making things easier for the workers is, first, you have to look at those other areas you can play a role. Healthcare, education, housing. Those are the areas where you play a role, and then you don't have workers come around and ask you for salary increase. One of the reasons why people always talk about workers demanding more money, is that that's the only thing they can ask for. Because that 30,000 naira is security, is power. I don't know how your power situation is in where you live. I know right now, in the last 2 weeks, I have spent almost 100,000 naira on diesel alone.
Same.
So you see the challenges that, all of that are the challenges that the average Nigerian worker faces. So if they do the heavy lifting, I mean, take care of security, take care of healthcare, take care of education, take care of accommodation, transportation, you find that workers won't grumble. In the Nordic countries, for example, Nordic countries, I mean Sweden, Denmark, what you have, you pay as high as 40%, 50% of your earnings. But you're happy to do that because you know your kids will get quality education, you will get quality healthcare, transportation is heavily subsidized. So if I'm in the shoes...
Just hold your thoughts. We'll come back for you to finish that thought. We'll just go on a quick break and we'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Sunrise. Mr. Esele, you were talking about doing the heavy lifting. If the government can do the heavy lifting in the areas of security, housing, education, you think that will make a difference?
Yes, it will make a difference. Let's take, for example, power. You know how much an average worker spends on power, but I also don't blame this government when it comes to the issue of power. Because this government, the privatization wasn't done by the current administration. The privatization was done by the previous administration, and that privatization was highly fraudulent. Because what you have at the moment is that you have people who saw the energy sector, or who decided to go into that area thinking that to make money. Yeah. Normally, when you invest in power, it's not something you look at. You invest ₦1 million, and at the end of the year, you want to get ₦2 million. If you're able to get 10%, 5% is a long-term thing. But what you have people who invested in that platform, what they were expecting is that they put in ₦1, and the next day they expect to get ₦1 million. So the challenge is that this government is in a catch-22 position. How are they going to extricate themselves from those agreements signed by the previous government? That is a big challenge, because you have workers now spending their money buying diesel and petrol.
So are you now saying that because you came in and the person who lived in the house before messed it up, but you chose to come into the house? Hold on, you now come in, and because it's messed up, you now live in it like that?
No, I think what this administration is doing, they're doing everything possible to find a way around it, because you have agreement. First thing is that if you terminate that agreement just for the sake of terminating it, you also send the wrong signal to international community, to foreign investors. People will now start wondering, can we invest in Nigeria? Somebody's going to wake up tomorrow and terminate the contract. But what I would advise the government to do is look at the various milestones. There is milestones by the National Electricity Regulatory Commission that these discos and gencos, because actually what I think they are doing, they're actually dancing disco with our own security. Yeah, because that is actually what they're doing. So if you take care of the power aspect of it, it makes life easier for the worker. And again, you also help the employers. I'd like to look at things from a opposite perspective, whereby if it's good for the employers, it will also be good for the employees. If employers are spending so much money on diesel and petrol, at the end of the day, they are not going to employ new workers, and they may even retrench. So if you look at it holistically, you find out that if we take care of power, workers will be better for it. If you also take care of security, workers will be better for it. You take care of transport. In UK, for example, you have the various tiers. Everybody knows where they belong. So if I'm on the low level, I wait for buses, or I take the tram. And then if I want to do the big man, then I take a chauffeur-driven car. So, but in Nigeria, we don't have those classes. So the government needs to also find a way to say, okay, what do we do here? Subsidize it, make it easier for the people. I'll just give an example. If I'm president of Nigeria, I want 3 things where I'm going to go: education, healthcare, security. All the major trunk A roads, you toll them. Then you don't go about spending 400 billion to construct one road from Lagos to Benin, which of course they've been doing in the last 10 years or 15 years, and they've not completed it. So there are major artery roads in Nigeria. You take that off, and let the private sector go into that area. The money you generate, you plow that money into education, into security, into healthcare. So once you take care of that, what you are going to have is that...
What you're now saying is, put the pressure back on those same workers you're trying to ameliorate their issue, their welfare. No, hold on. You're telling you're tolling the road.
Yes.
So as they pass through, whether they are driving or they are being driven, someone is paying a toll. So that's added to the transportation.
Now, remember what I just said, trunk A roads. How many trunk A roads do you have in Nigeria? I'm talking about the major roads connecting the country. I'm not talking about the roads whereby you pay 200 naira, 200 naira.
So you only pay when they're traveling?
Yes, you only pay when you are traveling. But the fact is that you put attention on education. You cannot talk about development without education. You cannot talk about development without healthcare. Those are the lifeblood. And if you do all of that, you find out that the life of your citizens will improve. I'll give another example. You are talking about, I heard you talk about productivity. How can a worker be productive when you are owing him 3 years' salary? There are some states in Nigeria where...
Did you mean 3 months?
3 years, 38 months. That's even more than 3 years. There's a state where workers are being held up to 38 months, that they will pay half salary. And then I heard another governor from the East just made reference to the fact that he's owing only 10 months. As if he's doing workers a favor.
Peter, if you're owed as many as 3 months' salary and you are still turning up for work, then the employer should begin to suspect that you're doing other things. Either you're stealing his money or you're spending his time doing other work from which you are earning money, because you have to feed your family. You have to pay school fees. You have to pay transportation for you, your children. So where are you getting funds to do all these things? Are these not questions that the employer is asking himself?
You can ask these questions, but sometimes you also find out that there are some people who are farmers. I'll give an example of my own story, personal story. My father worked in the civil service in the then Bender state. He wasn't paid. They asked him to go. Normally you pay gratuity. He wasn't paid. And slowly I watched the man lose his dignity because there wasn't any salary. And then at that age, that's why I said, when most times our government carry out certain activity, they don't know the repercussion. You destroy the next generation. And then I grew up telling myself that I wasn't going to work in the civil service. Because of what I saw my father went through. This was the old Bender state. So just imagine how many years ago that was. And we are still talking about the same thing.
When you talk about gratuity here, some states are owing as much as 10, 20 years of gratuity.
So how do you expect that family to survive?
Okay, let's bring in Mr. Olugbenle. So, President Esele has spoken about the heavy lifting. But he says if he was president, he will focus on education, health care, and security, right? But let's look at education, for instance. In Nigeria, practically every level of education appears to be subsidized. But in the Netherlands, or countries that he mentioned, what they subsidize is basic education, but you pay with your teeth for tertiary education. Can we do that? What about the curriculum we have?
Okay, let me give a fact here. It has been said, before any nation can truly witness development and transformation, 30% of its population must be exposed to tertiary information, tertiary education. How do you secure that for in Nigeria? Can we leave it to people to pay through their nose to get it? Or should we as government get involved? Also, we are told that UK, US are making a killing from Nigerians who are abroad. I have two abroad, and I know what I am having to go through. Why do I want to do that? Because education is a value for me. It's a must.
So you're paying that much?
I am paying that much.
Would you pay that much if you had that kind of curriculum here?
Definitely, why not? Why not? And if it is local, it's even more of a better situation for us, because then the likelihood of them being able to stay back and work in Africa, even if not in Nigeria, is higher. Once you expose them to the Western culture, the likelihood of them coming back is not there. Even them that we have told over the years that you must come back to Africa, the enabling environment to absorb them is not there. So they come 2-3 years, they are frustrated, and they go back. That's if some, what do they call that?
Blue chip companies.
No, the ones that shoot people indiscriminately. You know, the random bullet doesn't take you out. My father, I think you should be watching somewhere there now. He studied accountancy in Leeds, United Kingdom, on scholarship. He got a job, but he preferred to come back to Nigeria. And his first job was at ECN, and later on he moved to NIDB. That was a nation we had that invested in people, and the enabling environment was there, that they were all eager to come back. What happened? We lost our values. Value for money audit tells us that whatever government is spending, and government is the biggest employer, the biggest spender, is 40%. Maybe max. Let's give it to them 50. For every $100 spent, only $50 of value do we get. If all that savings, all that excesses, all that wastages, all that buying inefficiencies can be curbed, we have more than enough money to invest in education. Human Development Index tells us that how well do you live, how long do you live for, and what are the rewards that are in place for you.
In investing in education,
yes,
we look at the quality of, I mentioned the curriculum,
yes,
but the teachers who are teaching, if they are not happy, so we're going back to the heavy lifting thing. If they don't have a sound welfare, how would they teach?
Now, when you talk about education, you're talking about the entire system.
Yes, so let's look at the welfare of those who are imparting this knowledge. And some of them who are in leadership now actually pass through some of these teachers who are suffering now.
Okay, I did an MBA at the Lagos Business School. How did they do that? First of all, there was no license from Nigeria, so they went abroad and took a license from Esele. There was no PhD faculty. They went to the private sector and pulled technocrats in. So there is always a way out if we really have the will. We can get this done. We can go around it. Even if it's not the way other nations have done it, we can get it done. We know we don't have capacity right now. I mean, too many universities. Where are the lecturers? Where are the faculty coming from? Many of the universities that are being licensed today take adjunct professors from other universities, take visiting professors just to get accredited. Now, once accreditation is over, how then do you teach? How then do you pass on information? We have a big crisis, but we can do something about it. If we continue this conversation, and I'm even too sure there are people outside this country who are ready to come back if the enabling environment is there and help. If we declare a state of emergency in education, from primary school to secondary school to tertiary, we will be able to move significantly forward in the next 5-10 years.
Now, Peter, still on education, in those days, there were trade schools in Nigeria. For reasons best known to those who manage our education system, those seem to have disappeared. But we realize, and we also appreciate the fact that artisans are an important part of the value chain in certain areas. You cannot underestimate the value that a plumber is bringing in when you're constructing your house, a welder, but everybody wants to put on a suit and go and sit in an air-conditioned office. How do we change all that? You know, for instance, abroad that plumbers are rich, welders are rich, carpenters are rich. But in my country, nobody wants to be called by those names. Managing director, yes, that's me.
Comes back to our values. I'll give an, you see, my dad used to tell me that if you have not experienced it, don't talk about it. Now, I'll give an example of myself again. I left secondary school, and I was privileged to meet one Dr. Ogbe, who has a PhD in geology and a lecturer at University of Benin, and he set up geological consultants. And then he went to an agreement with Simon Robertson, and I happened to be one of those of his early trainees. And that was how I got into the oil industry, and I acquired a technical skill. I was trained, and I was already earning. My dad's 3-month salary was my 1-month salary, while I just, because of the technical skill that I acquired. But again, that gave me an opportunity that by the time I tried to get a university degree, I was getting a university degree, not because university degree was coming to put food on my table, was because of the way Nigerians think. So you now have to look at the value system. The value system now is that, oh, you need to have a degree. But when I was working, when I was working for an American company, the first thing they used to judge you is your skill. Your skill, what value are you adding? So at the end of the day, then I will come and I'll be training geologists who just came out of university. All they have is theory, they don't have practical knowledge. They will bring you, you are employed as a geologist, and then I'm a technician, but you'll be under me for another 2 years. And then you work under me for another 2 years before, and then my salary is not going to be stagnant. So it's going to take you a whole lot more to earn what I will earn.
Didn't you have any attitude problem with them?
No. And then at the end of the day, everybody just knows they know where they belong. And the management tells you, this is my responsibility. And you know you have to learn the ropes. But when you now come back here, what are we not doing? Who is your boss here? We used to have this joke that the IOCs or the foreign companies will go to Liverpool and just bring one guy here, and then the guy becomes our manager. But every Nigerian wants to work to make sure that the guy goes back, because he's earning dollars, And then when you add value, the management look at it and say, okay, fine, this guy, we are getting it from UK or from US, we are paying so much money. When local hands can do it, at the end of the day, you get 2 or 3 more people employed. So it's for you to look at education from a composite perspective. Channels is here. You can only have one managing director, but you can have several correspondents. You can have several line editors. You can have several cameramen. You can have several cleaners. But the focus now is on managing director. That is the way we run things in Nigeria. Forgetting that those who are below that position are very, very important. I'm sitting on this chair. If the cleaner doesn't clean this chair, we can't sit down here. So if you don't have a holistic way of thinking and looking at things from a composite perspective, instead of just being narrow, and that's the challenge we are facing. You just made reference to the teacher. When I was growing up, every holiday, we have teacher training colleges. So the teachers there, sandwich program, the teachers go there to refresh. But where are they going now? How do you even motivate the teacher to deliver?
Let me weigh in on this quick point. Many graduates today are doing Uber. Yeah. Point is, that is beginning to change. Because of hunger and need, people are beginning to realize that I need to follow where the money is. And I think a lot of people right now, and maybe one of the things we can do is begin to showcase these success stories that are not necessarily white-collared jobs. I believe the sector that is producing the highest number of millionaires today is the Eastern traders, that group of people where you have this apprenticeship thing, you serve your master for 8 years and it sets you up. That, like Ibuka has said at the platform, is what is being studied in business schools today because it is a proven system to produce millionaires. If we begin to showcase that as against a guy with a white suit, a white shirt, and a tie working in Chevron or in a bank, maybe we will begin to convince people.
Even Chevron don't wear tie. No, they wear coverall and helmet.
Correct. Correct.
Well, Festus Akimboyewa says government at all levels must do more to improve working conditions. Non-payment of salaries is akin to slavery and must stop.
Okay, Eric Westley says, the Nigerian government has done well for its civil servants in the last year. The lack of infrastructure has made the monthly income to a small piece of cake that makes them to pay high out-of-pocket costs for healthcare, housing, and many more. So in rounding up, gentlemen, way forward in terms of
way forward is very clear. First, we'll commend the government for paying the 30,000 naira. But secondly, way forward is, first of all, pay what you are owing. Government at all levels, not federal government, because federal government is always paying. Most of the state governors are owing, and if you don't pay, you don't expect to, that cannot enhance productivity.
Okay, taking it from what you have said, in addition to that, we call them workers. What is the capacity of the Nigerian worker? The GDP per capita today tells us that the Nigerian worker on the average is still only able to produce 3,000. There are nations that are doing 86,000. What can we do to increase our capacity for work? The civil servant is said to be minimalist. He wants to do the minimal work and get the highest of pay. The people who really do a lot of contribute in terms of work, locked up probably in the private sector, but we now need to make it a whole nation thing where the Nigerian has skills that are relevant in the 21st century for work.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. Olumide Olugbenle, Transformational Leadership Expert.
Thank you.
And we also had Mr. Peter Esele, former TUC President. Thank you very much both for coming to share your insights with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Sunrise will return in just a moment with another interesting conversation. Do join us.